I recently watched these two videos on the supposedly upcoming end update. Both of these are expressing some interesting opinions on how the end should be reworked, and in turn how they play Minecraft. One plays it as a survival game, which must confront the player with risk of death frequently. The other's playstyle I can only describe as mirroring what I have observed in MMOs. He seems to view the game in large part through social media. Thus, the view of a build or a biome and the novelty of items or mobs seem to hold prevalence. Quite frankly, both of their opinions challenge my own. That led me to wonder how the end would be updated if it were to fit my playstyle perfectly. Prologue. So, how am I actually playing Minecraft? I don't view Minecraft as a survival game. I don't think it is a survival game, actually. The added danger of beta Minecraft always detracted from making cool builds, and the quite frankly exhausting run back to my items is just, well, it's exhausting. It's merely delaying the panic of death into a pit of loathing that comes afterwards anyways. But conversely, I don't think survival mode should be like building Legos either. If you have everything and can change your environment at will, then what paths are left for you to follow? What goals left to achieve? Banger edits for your social media? Cool pictures for your Pinterest? Those are using the game to achieve outside goals. If you don't run a Minecraft build blog and wouldn't play creative mode, if it were all there is, then of course you're gonna stop building after a while. You're not building to build. You're building for a goal that you don't even seem to want to achieve. I inversely play Minecraft, well, at risk of sounding like another Forever World channel, to build infrastructure. Seeing villagers populate my towns feels quite rewarding, and oddly enough, they don't seem to get into my way all that much. That's like half of the male fantasy, by the way. The other half is castles, and they're parts of my towns too. And farms, well, I built those, one, because I'm lazy. I just don't want to farm sugarcane or bamboo manually. And two, because oftentimes having a small farm in a place that you are at a lot can replace a giant crop field. So, am I saying that I play Minecraft to build? Well, kinda, but also absolutely not. I don't generally build to look at a build, nor do I build to be inside my build spaces. I build to use builds, or rather I build builds for usability. Most of my builds do something. They either contain a farm or storage, or are just workshops for villagers that I trade with. And I think that ability to do something useful creatively, to solve problems your way, is something that makes games like Minecraft special. To use a little bit of game design language, it connects the goal-driven behavior, that's the survival thing, the MMO thing, having a goal and achieving it, with creative problem solving, which is the building thing, doing things your way. That kind of creates an environment of goal-driven creativity, if that is a term. Now that I've put goal-driven creativity into words, and one note, please do give me your opinions on this, I think Minecraft could lean even more into this goal-driven creativity. For one, we still have that 2-week Minecraft phase meme. That kind of implies some players do all the goals they immediately see and then feel like they have nothing else to do. I think it's clear why I think that would be a problem. The 2-week phase people could be helped with some goals that are hard to ignore and take long to solve. I'm not gonna review the entire design of Minecraft today, so to say it in the most inaccurate way possible, each step in the progression should require more time and more motivation to achieve than the previous one, just to ease them into choosing their own goals. And as they progress, their choice of goals should fan out slowly but steadily. Another problem that a lot of people seem to have at the moment is imposter syndrome about their own builds. That's something I think Monster noticed in his video too. To oversimplify, I think we need to force players to build and then either lower the pressure far enough for them to take the time and decorate, or up the pressure to force them to build more functionally. Although the latter is already done by a lot of factory building games, so stand out, be the low pressure alternative, the cozy factory game. That way they will see that they can build well. Because, dear viewer, you probably build a lot better than you think. Those two design goals in mind, let's talk about my wishes for the end update. To recap, I think the game needs more goals. 1, that introduce new goals in turn, which 2, become ever more intensive to achieve. But it also needs reasons to build and the freedom to experiment, not just to optimize, but also for comfort. Thus, Chapter 1, I think visiting the end must be an adventure. An end-venture, if you will. God damn it, I'm such an idiot. That means, yeah, I do agree with Monster. The end does need to become more dangerous. But not because Minecraft needs to be dangerous. Instead, because I think it can serve a very important feature in the resource economy of Minecraft. That is the resource sink. Resource sinks are concepts from MMO economy design. There, they are meant to take less valuable commodities out of circulation. In turn, they incentivize playing the content that produces these commodities. Usually they do this by simply providing a chance for a more valuable commodity in exchange. Using Guild Wars 2 as an example, that game has a place where you can exchange the farmable currency gold into the premium currency used to buy skins, character slots, all those MMO things. In Minecraft, a lot of things are both farmable and lack uses during the so-called endgame. Regardless of multi or single player, most worlds will not lack in food or basic building materials. Additionally, since mending, the value of diamonds has depreciated considerably. Most people go caving once, and after that, often only to spawn-proof near mob farms. The end can be a sink for those commodities. Basic, easily farmable building materials can be used to bridge or build safe houses. Food, of course, to heal, and, well, tools and armor can simply be risked there. That risk, of course, can feel like a backhand, as anyone who fell into the void before can attest. That's why this risk must be known to the player when they enter. Always open return portals on the Dragon Island could work for this, as they allow players to scout ahead, find out what they need to know, and in turn return prepared. A better solution are lore hints in structures near the end portal. Perhaps the fortress could contain books or signs which describe the risk of falling into the void. Perhaps even it could contain a practice course for ender pearls, bridging and jumping. That would have to be presented notably as a practice course though. A yet better way is the increasing prevalence of this risk in prior excursions. As we know in the overworld, on the surface you barely risk losing your items at all. The difficulty in navigating cave systems increases that risk, and the prevalence of lava and fire bring it to a near certainty in the nether. If now one has to brave these environments frequently and in succession, such that the risk remains in the player's mind for any incursion, there may not be a need for a much more explicit warning. Players then could be expected to keep backup gear in their bases at all times. Interesting, that is something that has been made rather seamless with the connecting shelves. I wonder if someone at Mojang had the same train of thought. Maybe. Maybe not. Goddamn, I'm a dumbass. Regardless of how this risk is tutorialized, for an informed player to take this risk, one would assume that the, I hate this word, reward has to be sufficiently high. I differ, but I do not beg to do so. To bring forth Guild Wars 2 for another example, once a player character reaches the level cap and thus begins the endgame, which is the rear game, the progression slows exponentially. The most basic set of gear there already provides roughly 60% of the stats of the most valuable set of gear. And notably, the hardest gear to get provides no additional player power at all, just utility. Thus, this game slows the rapid drop-off in motivation that comes with reaching the end of the game. At the same time, it gives players additional goals to pursue at their own leisure. I believe Minecraft could do this same thing. Even more, I believe that it could do this without an explicit increase in ever-present power. This, of course, is one of the harder challenges in game economy design, to not just provide options which outweigh the quote-unquote best without merely replacing it, but also without overtaking its utility locally in such a way that this new thing is deemed necessary by players. So let's ideate here actually. Please do tell me whether should the following items be added to the end specifically. You would deem them necessary, useless, or worth getting only if getting them is fun. 1. A tool which has a loader ability but mines most blocks instantaneously. Gold tools without tool swapping, basically. 2. An enchantment reducing the projectile drop of crossbows and bows, eventually to 0. A ray gun which does not have to be reloaded as frequently as the crossbow, but uses resources that can only be farmed in the end. If you have more ideas for loot, feel free to leave them in the comments. Should Mojang be able to walk this tightrope, hopefully better than I just did, it would be one step closer to turning the 2-week phase into a mere introduction to Minecraft as a game and canvas. But of course we can't have an adventure without the climax. Considering the Ender Dragon is when the credits roll, it may be best for the game if she moved aside, waited her turn. Chapter 1.5? The Ender Dragon? I don't believe that Minecraft as a whole needed an end boss. I don't believe Minecraft needed any bosses, but it may be best if a boss marked the end of the game's overt progression. Its campaign, if you will. And I do agree with Mogswimp about the dragon being somewhat aged for a boss fight. So let's use one of the games with the best boss fights I've played in ages as an example. Borderlands the pre-sequel. Don't tell me I should have cited any of the Souls games. I am aware that there are better ones. This one is good and easy to replicate, okay? Like the Ender Dragon, most bosses in this game have clearly delineated phases. Unlike the Ender Dragon, most attacks they throw at the player are not just dodgeable, but have to be dodged. Unlike that game, Minecraft doesn't have maneuvering thrusters. Minecraft has blocks, to build with specifically. A mechanic I think can be built into a climactic fight. See what I did there? For example, the dragon could create short AoE bursts on several height levels. To dodge this, you would have to build up or find a way to go down. The dragon should definitely use some projectiles too, as these can be blocked with walls quickly built. And mayhaps one finds a way to build battlements behind which to hide mid-fight. This opens a new possibility for projectile mobs being updated either, but let's delay that one for another day. And of course, the way the dragon destroys blocks may best be changed too. Perhaps instead of destroying blocks when she flies through them, an overhaul of explosion damage and the partially mined block state could allow her to attack player-built battlements and whittle them down. Should the damage decay over time, it would create an incentive to move between several builds too. A conventional DPS phase she would have to keep, however. One, to simply make her beatable for unexperienced players. 2, to lure players out of their safe spots and into an open space. An open space which they will have to escape once the DPS phase is over. The perching, I admit, does not have the vibes of a perch. Maybe she would simply land on flat ground and begin to attack with dodgeable or blockable patterns. She may swipe with her claws against nearby players, breathe fire into battlements, and whip vertically and horizontally with her tail before taking off to test the player's building and movement again. Regardless of how the fight looks, I do think she would fit into an explorable region. A place visibly of devastation, where a settlement of some kind once stood and soon became food for the predator of the void. Perhaps this is also the place where you will find the spoils of this excursion. On your way there, you will have to cross Chapter 2, the biomes of the end. While I do agree with Monster on the danger and vibes of the end, I also believe that it would be best if it had some variety. Keep in mind though, an oppressive and boring atmosphere can allow even dangerous or actively harmful environments to bring comfort to humans. I think that does count for all mammals actually. So we can wholeheartedly preserve the atmosphere of the end, even heighten it, by adding new biomes. But to do that, it may be best to stay with Monster here and have large parts of the end remain barren. And I mean truly barren. Few endermen, few mobs at all, and importantly, no food sources, so no chorus trees. The threat of this biome can, in large parts, come from the idea of falling into the void and getting lost. To achieve the first, we can use jumping puzzles, which additionally can lend variety to the voids that need crossing between islands. Imagine shards of shattered islands, a path where one simple misstep can lead you to a long fall. Take the Nether's basalt deltas as inspiration. Some patches crossable practically by walking, others sparse, perhaps including jumps that are not even possible. That you have to discern. The simple result of floating rocks meeting each other in empty space. Another way to cross the void has been discussed before, and yes, it will inspire one of the biomes I am about to pitch. Flying whales pathing across the void. Maybe they're not even trying to help, merely uninterested in doing harm. Sadly though, for these to function within the current balance of the game, they will compete with other methods of flight. The Elytra, yes, but that may best remain unbeaten in speed and maneuverability of flight. More importantly, the Happyghast is fundamentally too similar to the fantasy of sky whales to remain unaddressed in this discussion. A big mob on which you stand that moves slowly but steadily through the air. That's basically the fantasy of a sky whale. We can handle this in two ways. One by simply not allowing the Happyghast through the end portal, a choice that will feel forced and will annoy some who attempt it. The better option is to simply make end whales better at crossing the void than ghasts, but more local. The first utility here is speed. A lack of options other than onward will leave players wishing to pass the time. That will be such regardless of how long the travel takes. But shortening the trip does relieve the discomfort of inaction somewhat. The second utility is interest. The discomfort of inaction can be relieved much better by providing focal points of thought. That end whales could provide much better than ghasts, simply by being localized. If they are not tameable, and instead retread the same paths, their rarity will inherently make them such focal points. Alternatively, the routes of end whales could become the home of phantoms, which they hunt. To use a Happyghast, then one would have to fight off flocks, though their phantoms may simply become overbearing as they are in the overworld. Maybe instead shooting phantoms out of the sky from the back of a sky whale could be a minigame that simply speeds up the whale. The third utility is safety. A Happyghast will feel somewhat precautious to many players, simply for the fact that they can cause their own demise. An end whale therefore could lock players into a safe route. Perhaps these gentle giants should hold on to players at their own volition, only allowing them to leave over islands. In any case, the Desolation only offers inspiration for a few bases, and we do want players to build, do we not? Thus, the end must also have some beautiful regions. Places that you will wish to be in. Places that may be teeming with life. To counterbalance their rich atmosphere, these should remain unwelcoming in function, a task that is entirely possible just by judging real-world locations. Take as an example hydrothermal vents. The water here will boil the flesh of your bones. Yet it is one of the few places within the deep ocean where life does not just prevail, but thrive. The mounds of end vents could produce a wood without being trees, without even looking like trees, or without providing any of the other necessities of life. Surrounding them could be something looking like coral reefs or barnacle-like growths, and rarely sulfur pits, the water of which may apply negative status effects and hold both queer fish and odd crabs. As promised, another host of life within the deep ocean. Whale falls. Places where the carcasses of deceased cetaceans feed a host of alien life forms. From the familiar octopods and crabs to bacterial patches in yellow which digest the waste products of scavengers, and the red grassy Oxidax worm which eats away at the bones left behind by all others. The creatures here, however, should best be suitably fantastical to avoid breaking Mojang's stance on animal violence, for all life in a whale fall is carnivorous. It can and will eat you if you give it a chance. This local threat may be a suitable reprieve from the pressure and emptiness of endless empty rocks. Additionally, it may provide further uses for the Bane of Arthropods enchantment, as crabs, octopods, and giant isopods are all among the scavengers of whale falls. Getting more fantastical, a hostile barnacle like the shulker or the mobvoad barnacle may be found here too. But of course, if we want people to actually build in the end, they must have a way both in and out. One that could be provided by Chapter 3, a farmable for the end. Now, I do agree that Mogswamp's idea of teleporters can be dangerous, especially if they are long range. There would be no reason to build roads, railways, or nether tunnels. Many wouldn't even care much about the elytra either. I also see the threat of an escape option for PvP servers, though I believe that it may be interesting to see people jump between dimensions while on the run. That is, if we can make that transport at least somewhat seamless. Keeping both of these in mind, I think a way to connect end bases with overworld ones remains necessary to incentivize players to actually build outposts in the end. I may add that farms are one of the major excuses for some players to build. So I think a method of transportation between dimensions rather than distances would help the end greatly. There is of course another notion about this to discuss. Should it be an item or a playable structure? I believe that it should be a playable structure, because structures are localized and take time to set up. Thus, it would be unreasonable to 1. Trivialize expeditions into the end by resupplying in the overworld, and 2. Use this structure as a method of escape in PvP situations. By requiring large amounts of farmable resources to build, this structure can also be protected from being spammed. An additional lever here, of course, is stack size. It would also need to be worse at overworld travel than conventional travel methods to not replace structures like nether highways and items like elytra. So I suspect that it would be best if it merely translates your coordinates 1-to-1 before seeking the nearest safe spot. Yes, the safe spot seeking is still abusable, but it would require a staggering amount to work. Thus, it's worth keeping in the game either way. How this item would be farmed is another discussion. I personally am not looking forward to additional metals being added to Minecraft, as they will inevitably be used to craft another tier of gear with the same uses and just different stats. Though perhaps a mineable or lootable gem as central component would fit. Then encased by a pseudo wood, which may generate over time in the previously discussed end vents, and perhaps an item provided by a mob of the end. maybe carapace fragments from the crabs that we discussed for the whalefall. And just an idea here, maybe something that would otherwise remain rather valuable, like shulker shells. In either case, the total amount of work may best be rather high to incentivize sparing use and require large amounts of at least one renewable resource to give technical players their excuse to research new farms here. To summarize, because I see Minecraft as a game about building infrastructure that changes the limits of a world, I hope that an end update would give us reasons to build, well, in the end. I do hope for at least one farm, hopefully requiring a somewhat novel approach, a goal worth a dangerous expedition, a method to connect builds within the end with those in the overworld, and a resource sink that will require us to build, farm, and play in the overworld. An overhauled Ender Dragon fight is secondary to this, but it may serve as an incredible endpoint for speedrunners and a goal to motivate players who have not found the enjoyment in building in themselves quite yet.